meeting, consideration of the development agreement. Would entertain, if you'd like to tell us what happened at the...
Your Worship, a public hearing was held on January 9th, 2020 to receive written and verbal comments from the public on the Town of Mahone Bay's declared intention to enter into a development agreement with McLeod Group Health Services Limited, owner of property on Main Street, PIDs 605-94827, 603-74766, and 604-20668. Council received written comments in advance of the meeting from Tom Bannister and Shirley Oikel, Tom and Marion Webb, and Verva Sandstrom. 6 comments were received at the public hearing.
I'd appreciate a motion to approve the development agreement as noted. And with that motion, we would then be able to have a discussion.
So moved.
Moved and seconded by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Now, that we approve the development agreement. On the question, what is Council's?
Mayor, just a point of clarification. We heard a number of homeowners discuss their concerns around a lack of a detailed foliage screening and tree planting plan within the development agreement. I know that that topic was well debated at the PAC, and it was my understanding that the consensus of the PAC was that, based on input from the developer, that the optimized and most elaborate, most effective plan to that effect could only be conducted at some later stage of the development. And so the conundrum of can we get an optimized, maximized, best in principle plan at this stage, or should we undertake with some level of trust and faith in the developer based on their assertions that this plan will be forthcoming, will be detailed, and will be neighborly? PAC debated that and discussed that and approved clauses to that effect. And that is what constitutes the development agreement at this point. So it's a situation that's been well understood by council. And I just wonder if that is indeed a fair point. I think that fairly indicates where we are.
Okay. Councillor Bain?
Yes, Your Worship. Looking at section 10 on landscaping, I feel that there's enough dialogue and information there. Should look after the concerns of the people that spoke regarding landscaping.
Okay.
Section 10 clearly talks about mitigating, reading it. Off on the screen now.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill?
One of the clarifications that I wanted to just highlight, and Councillor Feeney mentioned it, in terms of the neighborliness of the development, we have received extensive assurances from this developer as to the neighborly development and their intention for beautifully landscaping. I'm not sure that was the exact word, but landscaping the property. I feel that some of the concern of the residents has to do with the lack of, or with the plan as it stands, as a concern that is the set in stone to the square millimeter. I'm elaborating. What I want to say is that the plan as it stands is an indication of what will be developed, but it isn't an indication of what exactly will be in every square meter of that entire site. So the understanding would be that if buffering is required in order to accomplish some of this neighborliness, then that is something that the developer would take into account during the development. Mm-hmm. And I felt that was a strong part of our conversation and understanding.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Oh, and if I can just add, the buffering is that we discussed was also along the parking lot, mm-hmm. and directly which would directly address the concern for the, what was described by some as a commercial look, that there would be a buffering as you did approach the town. So I felt, both in discussions in the planning committee and at council, that those were, as Councillor Feeney said, very discussed in depth, and I feel confident in the assurances of the developer on those points.
Thank you.
I feel the same way as being on PAC. I think we had clarified that at PAC. And also, Mr. Douglas brought up about the fire protection, that type of thing. The fire chief and the deputy chief discussed this at length with the McLeod group. And I think there are things in place for that. If the town water supply is enough, they're willing to take steps to put in a cistern, do whatever is necessary to. They have to, and for their insurance purposes, they have to make sure that they are protected.
Okay. Councillor Carter?
Yes, thank you. I am pleased to see that the progress that's been made and the positive changes that have been made in this draft, or in this development agreement, since the discussions at our Planning Advisory Committee. And it does make me feel hopeful about the good intentions and the community-mindedness of the whole project. That being said, when I look at the diagrams, I do see that the parking lot is very close to the eastern boundary, and I personally can't visualize where a berm or adequate substantial planting is going to go there in order to provide the buffer that has been discussed tonight. So I don't know what the process is for discussing that, other than to say I'm concerned about that. I see it as a concern. And I certainly resonate with the neighbors' concerns about that. Apart from that concern, I really am impressed with the positive development that has come along with this one. I have one reservation about the water runoff and the lack of reference to permeable parking lot and road surface. In one of the correspondence that we've seen from the developer, was reference to the fact that there was no funding and no permission for looking at, if I understand that correctly, for permeable surfaces. And again, I don't know if we are able to have information about that at this meeting, or whether we have to just look at this the way it is, but I would hope that there would be more consideration about permeable surfaces, because there is significant concern about the runoff. And just on a technicality, one of these items, clause 7, there's a slight little funny glitch in where the number is. The number isn't positioned properly. It should be beside parking and access. And it's still in the overhead lighting.
Yes. Councillor O'Neill?
To follow up on Councillor Carver's point, and I should start by saying I do share her the concerns that she raised, or the items that she brought forward. There is a provision for, I believe, a minimum of 85 parking spaces in this development, and that was something that when that was discussed at PAC and when I read it, and we did discuss whether that number of parking spaces, it exceeds by a large number the required number of parking spaces. And so I suppose it was my hope that when landscaping was being considered, and when, as Councillor Carver pointed out, there was no in the current blueprint space for a berm, that the excess number of parking spaces would be taken into account by a developer, and that, that there is, I just would like to formally acknowledge that there is actually space for buffering.
There is an opportunity.
There is an
to create that
opportunity
buffer.
for buffering, and I just would like to share Councillor Carver's hope that soft parking for those spaces in excess of those required by the land use bylaw would be considered by the developer. I would see that as very positive.
Thank you. Anyone else? A difficult decision, to be sure. These kinds of decisions always are. And for me, at the end of the day, it's what's best for the town. You know, there's 1,050 people that live in this town. Some of us have elderly parents, and some of us are in a mad race to get there ourselves. And as someone suggested, the healthcare system in Nova Scotia does come under a lot of criticism, and care for seniors is one of those areas. The whole notion of nursing homes and assisted living. And I think this is just the opening gambit for Mahone Bay in terms of being able to provide those kinds of services for not just our community, but for people who don't live in Mahone Bay. That's their problem. They should be living in Mahone Bay. But anyway, we're going to be able to accommodate people as a result of having this new nursing home. We go from 61 to 96 beds. There's a provision for some assisted living. And we haven't even really looked seriously at what's going to happen in the old facility, although there are some ideas that are being bounced around. So as difficult as the situation becomes, it's now time to ask council to give us their decision on this DA. And if I could have a motion to make this a recorded vote. Moved and seconded. Okay, Councillor Feeney and Councillor Now. And we'll do it alphabetically.
Missing somebody.
Councillor Bain, how do you vote?
I vote in favor of the proposal.
Councillor Carver?
Yay.
Councillor Feeney?
Vote in favor?
Councillor Noss? Favor. Councillor Now?
In favor?
And Councillor O'Neill?
In favor.
And I am in favor as well. The motion is unanimously carried that we will proceed with this development agreement with the McLeod Group for the new nursing home. Thank you very much for that decision. It's been a long grind. It's been a tough one. Anything else you council would like to discuss?
Motion to
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. We don't even ask to ask.
Okay.
We can just go. Thank you, everyone, for being here.